From David Szymanski, the creator of Dusk, there comes a mysterious, dystopian indie horror game where you pilot a tiny submarine through an ocean of blood on an alien moon. Iron Lung. This short horror experience holds a lot more to it than meets the eye, however. There are already excellent video essays analysing deeply how and why the game creates intense atmosphere, using cosmic horror and the fear of the unknown, or being alone, or the fear of not being alone to scare the player, as well as videos reviewing the game overall, or even exploring the lore. So, today I've got something a little more unique, something I'm honestly surprised no one else has done yet. Today, I'm going to provide a comprehensive list of every terminal log in Iron Lung, and use that to delve into the lore and timeline of the game comprehensively. This should be perfect for catching up on what you might have missed, but if I do end up missing something, mention it in the comments below so we can amend that error. Either way, stay tuned to see the secrets of the Blood Ocean. Greetings and welcome to Continuity Error. My name is Matt, and today I want to apologise for my messy room, which I've thankfully mostly hidden behind this pillow, and whatever is going on with my hair, it has a life of its own. I don't know what's happening. But you know, even if this— oh my god. I promise that something better will be on screen soon. It's just that, you know, even if it's only for a little bit, just once at the start of the video, I like actually being on camera. It gives us a personal touch, you know. Anyways, I gotta tell you something about how this video was made. So I always had a rough idea for a potential Iron Lung video essay, but a few weeks ago during a live stream over on my main channel— there's a link to that in the description, by the way— I met Pastra. Yes, the Pastra, and I spoke to him for a while about a few things, including this. I think there's another indie up-and-coming game which people don't talk about enough— Iron Lung.
I remember I played through Iron Lung because everyone was asking me to play it, and it was one of those games where I finished, I'm like, this game was amazing. However, I don't have any strong feelings towards it.
No, that's fair.
Either positive or negative. The game is like an extremely well-crafted horror experience, but I genuinely feel like if I made a video on Iron Lung, there is nothing I could say about the game that hasn't already been said by other people. Yeah, so naturally I joined Pastra's server, and yep, he's not covering the game. So I am. Now, before we begin looking at the terminal logs themselves, it's worth noting that there are other similar sources of lore: the intro, briefing, note, and ending texts. There's too much here for me to simply just read out loud, word for word, since I don't want this video to be like an hour long, so I'll try and condense it down. If you so wish, feel free to pause the video on each log so you can read them in full for yourself. Alternatively, you can use the chapters timestamped in the description below to skip ahead to the analysis and the actual lore discussion. Or you can just sit through and watch the whole video. I mean, you're gonna have to if this thing's still premiering live as you're watching it, so enjoy. Finally, last but not least, if you haven't seen or played Iron Lung for yourself, obviously go and do that first. This video is going to have major spoilers for everything in the lore. It's a short game, it's cheap, you can play it for yourself on Steam, links in the description, go check it out. It'll take like 2 hours, or you could just watch like a let's play if you want. I mean, I might have done a let's play, which may or may not be linked in the description, I don't know. Golly gee, you better go check. So that's your warning, this video contains spoilers. Go experience Iron Lung before you watch this, unless you don't care about spoilers, in which case, let's get started. When we hit New Game, we are introduced to the Quiet Rapture, a mysterious event where every known star and habitable planet vanished. At the same time, anomalous oceans of blood on barren moons started appearing, which surviving humans have sent you to investigate. You are a convict, and if successful in your mission to explore the Blood Ocean in the Iron Lung, you'll earn your freedom. Pressing B after the intro cutscene will bring up the briefing. This is mainly just instructions on how to pilot the sub, and therefore how to play the game, but we also learn from here that this is the 4th Blood Ocean discovered 2 weeks ago during an exploration of Moon 85 for the first time since the Quiet Rapture, implying that this moon was known and existed before the Quiet Rapture. It just didn't have oceans of blood before then. And now we come to the terminal. What do we search in here? Help? Hello? Information? How about the actual title of the game itself? Searching Iron Lung, or SM-13, since the sub has both a nickname and a number code, tells us again that the Iron Lung is the name of the vehicle we are inside, the rusty old submarine designed for deep liquid photography, used in conviction realization. Something unusual to note is the disclaimer that rumors of the COI submarines being used for mob justice, by way of forced suffocation, have been proven false. This sounds quite suspicious, and given the note that can be found in the Iron Lung, more on that later, and the
redacted paragraph in the middle of this very log, something tells me that the COI isn't being entirely transparent here. Next up is blood oceans. As mentioned before, there are 4 known blood oceans, all found on barren moons, all anomalies discovered since the Quiet Rapture, 2 of which are under control of the COI. Another disturbing fact is that the blood is indeed human, though how it retains liquid form is unknown. We can also read logs about the moons under COI control, including AT5, which has been redacted, and Z8, that has been historically used for conviction realization until the discovery of Moon AT5. Given this detail, and the mention of AT5 being of particular interest, it's pretty clearly implied that the main gameplay takes place on AT5 rather than Z8. This is a pertinent moment to go more in depth on the Quiet Rapture itself too. The Rapture's log tells us that in 357 EIC, radio contact with planets was suddenly cut without warning. No one can recall any visual contact with the planet at the time, nor any other unusual phenomena, simply that where there were once planets, there was now nothing but empty space. As the document says, further investigation over the following months revealed that all known planets with sentient life, flora and fauna, a habitable atmosphere, or any sort of natural resources were likewise gone, along with all known stars. The only things that remained were barren moons and asteroids, as well as spacecraft. There are numerous theories on what really happened, but no concrete answers yet. Moving on, you're probably wondering by now, what is this conviction realization that they keep mentioning? According to the logs, conviction realization is a humane form of criminal justice used by the COI, where crimes are repaid by rendering service to the general collective. Given the redacted paragraph, and the introduction's mention of us being a convict earning our freedom, it would seem that this includes surveying blood oceans, and the COI knows that it involves great danger and secret information, or is trying to cover up something in that redacted paragraph about those rumors mentioned earlier. Speaking of the COI, COI stands for Consolidation of Iron, and they are a brotherhood, ruled by popular vote, of 257 spacefaring humans, founded on the principles of collectivism and unity, named after the main materials used to craft their space stations and ships. The COI also regards Eden as a menace. Eden is a space station, the largest known man-made structure remaining in the entire universe in the wake of the Quiet Rapture. It was the flagship of Mars, meaning that its population of 468 retains a strong sense of Martian patriotism and independence. They are also the holders of the only known remaining trees in the universe, and considered a threat because of what happened on Filament Station. And Filament Station, well, in 362 EIC, a 9-day battle between the COI and Eden erupted on what used to be the COI's largest space station. Battle ended when Eden troops resorted to sabotaging the station's reactor. This is followed by another redacted paragraph. The last paragraph detailing how Filament Station was left uninhabitable due to radiation, and prisoners taken during the conflict have been undergoing conviction realization since, expected to repay their debts and integrate into COI society by 381 EIC. EIC stands for Epoch of Planetary Colonization, the predominant calendar used throughout the known galaxy after the establishment of the first off-Earth colony on Mars in 1992 AD, 0 EIC. Eden uses IMC, however, which stands for the Interstellar Martian Calendar, and as opposed to using the rotation of the Earth to count the years as EIC does, IMC uses the rotations of Mars to count the years, meaning that 1 year in EIC is 1.88 years in IMC. Oddly enough, there is no log for Earth in Iron Lung, but Mars tells us about how the planet was the most populated in the solar system before the Quiet Rapture, and surpassed Earth in 143 EIC. Which would be 2135 AD. I guess it's also interesting to note that the Quiet Rapture would have happened in 2349 AD and the Filament Station attack in 2354 AD, with the game happening sometime between then and 2373 AD. Now that covers most of the logs in the game. There are small bonuses such as Fish and Monster, giving us fully redacted logs, implying that the COI already knows a bit about the creatures we see in the gameplay, and there is even a warning given for saying certain swear words. But at last, it's time to talk about the most interesting secrets of the game. On the floor of the Iron Lung there is a note, presumably left by a now dead previous convict sent into the Blood Ocean, ranting about their situation. They claim that the expedition is in reality an execution. They, the COI, don't want us to return, and even if we do, there is no hope, nor freedom, in a few dying ships in a sea of dead stars. Only beyond the veil, breathing their last, unseen, unheard, and uncontrolled, will the COI get their execution and the prisoner get their freedom. When the game finally ends, after you've reached the final point of interest, the game closes off with a statement about how the SM-13 was found in pieces, as though it had been torn apart by some huge beast. Neither wreckage nor photographs were recovered, and while the universe is dying, somewhere in the void there must be hope. And that is almost everything. Let's do some analysis now. So, to me, I think there are some things which are pretty clear-cut and explained, a lot of pieces that fit together pretty cleanly. I know you'll want to dive into the big mysteries first, but let's actually just start with what we have the most information on. To begin with, the humans. Eden are a patriotic and independent faction, whereas the COI are collectivist and ruled by popular vote of the people, meaning that they are democratic. But of course, we are hearing this from the biased view of the COI. In fact, the COI are overall a very suspicious group, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were lying about their democratic nature, or at least taking political actions without the true consent of their voters. Rumors of some conviction realizations actually being executions aligns with exactly what the note writer, one of the convicts directly involved, claims to be happening. There are many redacted paragraphs in COI archives, including ones relating to their own history with conviction realization and filament station. In fact, given the meaning of their name and the imagery on the introduction screen, I don't think it would be a stretch to say that the COI was inspired by the USSR, the communist regime of Russia and neighboring territories for the majority of the 20th century in the real world. Both share collectivist ideals and economic practices, pride in steel production, and many, many lies about how democratic they were and how they treated prisoners. The USSR also kept many of its dirty acts a secret, and even if we ignore these subtle similarities and the overall vibe I'm getting from the COI, Eden's two main defining traits are patriotism and independence. Tell me that doesn't sound like Space America. A newly colonized Mars would be similar to the New World of the 18th century, and politically would be a breeding ground for similar colonies, a promised land of freedom and new opportunities, a place where you can go and start a new life. The only major difference I'm really seeing is that, given the attack on Filament Station, the futuristic iteration of the Cold War here isn't so cold. In any case, there are clearly ideological divides between the two factions, even going as far as using separate calendars, but these go even further after the Quiet Rapture. When that happens, and changes everything, resources need to survive become extremely scarce due to the obvious lack of habitable planets. Remember how Eden owned the only known trees left in the universe? This was probably one of several sources of tensions between the two, and I would bet was directly evolved in the attack of Filament Station, which happened 5 years after the Quiet Rapture. Eden's population is also much higher than the COI's, likely meaning that they have a more sustainable economy and food, as well as a larger station. Moving on with our timeline, after the attack on Filament Station, the next event referenced is that prisoners from the battle were taken from Eden and have been undergoing conviction realization since. Does that include the writer of the note in the sub? They do seem very pro-freedom. Could it even be that we, the player, were a soldier for Eden who fought on Filament Station all those years ago? And the rest is history. We know what happens to the player. Let's shift gears now and talk about that juicy unknown lore. The Quiet Rapture. What happened? How? Why? Was it a religious rapture? A literal transportation of some believers of some religion to heaven? Was it some unknown quantum anomaly? Could it have involved something more cosmic and sinister? The truth is, we don't know. We can't know. There isn't enough information to confirm nor deny any of these theories, but with the information we do have, I'm going to try and narrow down the possibilities. So here's what we know for a fact. The Quiet Rapture happened suddenly, without warning. We know that nobody remembers seeing anything vanish or any other unusual phenomena. Aside from stars, all specifically habitable planets with life and natural resources disappeared. Uninhabitable moons and asteroids remained, as well as spacecraft. So thinking about it, if it happened suddenly and without warning, how fast could it have occurred? Well, radio transmissions were cut instantly, and radio waves travel at the same speed as light, 300 million meters per second. Now, we don't know how far the various human spacecraft were from their respective planets, but I doubt any of them were far enough from them for there to be a significant delay, unlike the starlight. Because if the stars all vanish too, how come they can be seen on the menu and ending screens? Well, those are ghost lights. See, even at the highest possible speed, light takes a long time to travel across the gargantuan depths of space, outwards from stars. The light from our sun takes 8 whole minutes to reach Earth. It is 8 light minutes away. The nearest star to Earth is over 4 light years away. It would take years, decades, maybe even centuries for all of the stars to disappear, because we are seeing them as they were from years ago, and in the game, It is the light that is still traveling towards our eyes. We are seeing the stars as they were before the quiet rapture. So unless these space stations were significantly further from their planets than Earth is to the sun, the quiet rapture couldn't have taken more than minutes to happen, start to finish. That kind of delay would have given humans an opportunity to communicate with other spacecraft what was happening, unless it started at the exact same moment relative to every single planet and star in the universe, which would make sense. This only gives us a rough limit to how long it could have been though. The quiet rapture might have been extremely fast, almost instantaneous. It could have happened at literal light speed within a nanosecond. Now, the strangest thing about the quiet rapture is the second fact, that nobody can recall seeing it. How could something so massive, so vast, spanning the entire universe, not have actually been seen by anybody? If every habitable planet and star actually vanished from existence, how could there not have been a single witness? The phrasing suggests that everyone was unable to remember seeing anything, not that they didn't see anything. Could thousands of humans have witnessed planets vanish and simply forgotten about it, had their memories erased, as well as any other unusual phenomena of the moment? Too little is known to be certain. Maybe it really was just so fast that the human eye couldn't process it. At this point, I believe that we can rule out any possibility that technology removed all planets and stars from the universe. No machine or structure built by anything in the universe could suddenly wipe away all of creation like that, unless, of course, Iron Lung is set in a simulated universe and the simulators decided to test this scenario. So it must be something supernatural, paranormal, or magical, right? While it's possible that some godlike force was able to, for whatever reason, purge all of the planets and stars from existence in an instant, there is a sci-fi explanation that makes a lot more sense when you think about it. It's simply a matter of perspective. What if, rather than all the planets and stars in the universe just disappearing, all of the spacecraft and space stations were suddenly transported to another universe? What if the quiet rapture didn't cause habitable worlds to vanish, but all spacecraft, as well as the barren moons and asteroids now manifesting blood oceans, to be teleported into a parallel universe with nothing else but an empty void? This makes a whole lot more sense, and the cause could still be anything. A supernatural cosmic entity, an alien technological experiment or weapon, but there is one problem with this theory: the stars. If this is a whole different plane of reality, how come the light of the stars from the original universe are still visible? Does this universe just happen to have identical constellations? Now I'm less convinced by this theory, so let's look more deeply at the third and final fact. The quiet rapture cannot have been an accident. Everything natural needed to support life was specifically targeted. Planets housing atmospheres and resources, stars providing light, but spacecraft were unaffected. Was this an attempt by some ancient god, perhaps unable to comprehend machines that could support living beings off-world, to wipe out all life in the universe? Maybe creatures from another dimension, or some anomalous entity or entities, some fictional demonic twist on dark matter, or some kind of SCP, attacking anything they recognized as living? But of course, these are all random guesses, and don't account for the fact that the quiet rapture ended just as it started, sudden and unannounced. Surviving humans haven't continually disappeared either, just the planets and stars that happened to home most of them, so the target wasn't life itself, just the natural home of any kind of life. There are still numerous possibilities with this, but I'm leaning towards anomalous and/or supernatural godlike life forms causing this one, rather than dark matter or some other physics just happening because of random particle interactions. All that leaves now is the blood oceans themselves. Perhaps the centerpiece of the game will be the final thing to close in on the quiet rapture, since the two are directly connected. We've explained the COI and Eden, we've explored possibilities regarding the rapture, but how come there are now oceans of blood housing giant fish monsters and buildings, skeletons, and even the bizarre anomaly in the trench? Part of my reasoning for the spacecrafts being transported to another universe is because it would explain this simply and cleanly. Everything has different histories and different biologies, but of course, that's too easy. So let's think of everything in the blood oceans as originating from our universe, or at least whatever caused the quiet rapture. It's possible that the planets were teleported elsewhere during the quiet rapture. There are not one, but two instances of actual straight-up teleportation in Iron Lung, where we are literally shunted off with a rattle suddenly while in the blood ocean. The second time this occurs happens specifically while leaving the intense vibrating effect of the anomaly known as the Void Star according to the game files. The teleportation here is short distance, but what if it's some kind of microcosm for the planets and stars vanishing? Were they teleported so far away that they are outside the observable universe? Were they simply placed somewhere else in the endless void, so far away that they were still in the same universe, simply rearranged to appear that they all cease to exist? If they travel far enough, are they just in a separate universe now? This would explain the Earth-looking buildings and skeletons in the ocean, but what about the blood? Were so many humans teleported onto the moons that, and this would be incredibly dark, that they all died and bled enough to form oceans of human blood? But if so, where are the bodies? Were they ground up by demons or a chemical or some other anomaly? We can't say. Given that the blood retains its liquid form despite the conditions of the moon, perhaps it manifested via anomalous means. But matter and energy cannot be destroyed, only transferred, so it has to have come from somewhere. And if that somewhere was all the habitable planets that vanished, if the ocean we are traveling through is literally made from the atoms of millions, billions of deceased humans, then that is truly horrifying. There's sadly not a whole lot else to uncover here. It would seem to me that the deepest root we can dig to is the Void Star anomaly. Some larger version of versions of this may have been responsible for the Quiet Rapture, but where did those come from? Were they summoned from another reality by a spell, or manifested because of a quantum anomaly? There is no way to say, and that's not even starting on the other unanswerable questions of the Blood Ocean, such as the existence of the humming monolith. And that would be it, if not for one last secret. The COI marked 10 points of interest on your map, but there are other secret locations with unique structures, including, out beyond the final point of interest, this, SM8. And searching for that in the terminal,
hopefully they don't redact this before updating the database. What most people don't understand is that not all subs are built equal. The SMA isn't a burner sub, it really is for exploring and surveying blood oceans. If they send you down the iron lung, they don't give a fuck if you come back or if the sub comes back, because it's a pile of garbage and you're a piece of shit. You come back with photos, great. You sit down there and suffocate quietly, even better. But if they send the SMA down, one of the scientists is piloting, and they all expect them to return. And now the SMA is in the blood ocean in pieces. No, not hit a rock pieces or sprung a leak pieces. It looks like something tore it up. And the weirdest thing is that nobody else seems surprised. We might have just found the first planetary life since the Rapture, and they're acting like it's no big deal. I know you're next in line for realization in the Iron Lung, and usually that means you won't be seeing the stars again. But they don't have the SMA anymore. They have 3 burner subs and a lot of curiosity about 85. And maybe that means you have a chance.
So, we don't know who this is, perhaps another convict or someone else in the COI who personally knows the player, but it tells us a lot. The SM8, unlike the SM13 or other subs, was specifically built for exploring the blood oceans, rather than being used for conviction realization, which this article confirms to be an execution method, and at least one person has died on the island before, probably whoever wrote the note. The SM8 was piloted by a scientist, but just as the SM13 is found after the ending of the game, the SM8 was found by satellites, and us, literally viewing the wreckage with the camera outside in order to even find the secret terminal log. Weirdly, the writer mentions that nobody else seems surprised that they might have found the first planetary life since the Rapture. Perhaps the COI leaders found similar life on Z8 and already know of the horrors of the blood oceans, or are simply trying to keep this secret for whatever reason. They know something that the log writer and the player don't, that's for sure. The log ends with a hopeful remark about having a chance. The question is, why are the COI so curious about 85? What did they find 2 weeks prior with the satellite observations and the SM8 exploration that was so intriguing? Was it just what we run into during the game, or more anomalies unknown to us? We can't say, and it's not even clear if the player ever actually read the log, since it's incredibly unlikely for someone to find it during a first playthrough. Whether or not it was read though, it is definitely canon, just as much as the player's death was. So, in summary, the Iron Lung lore timeline. Humanity must have accelerated, or rather not held back, its development to become spacefaring and Mars colonizing by 1992. Mars becomes so popular that it overtook Earth in population after a century and a half, and 3.5 centuries later, in some kind of futuristic human civilization spanning the galaxy, the COI and Eden evolve into 2 hostile factions of spacefaring humans. Suddenly, the Quiet Rapture happens. All we know is that it was fast, no one saw it, and it was likely an intentional event, be it a quantum anomaly or a supernatural action of a god or a simulated action in a simulated universe. Regardless, resources become scarce, leading into conflict between Eden and the COI, including the attack of Filament Station 5 years after the Quiet Rapture. Prisoners from Eden are taken and put to work on conviction realization for decades. By this point, the COI have discovered the Blood Moon ZA and learn of 2 others not under their control. Perhaps Eden is also surveying their own blood oceans? The COI uses conviction realization in 3 burner subs, including the Iron Lung, to execute prisoners while also studying their own blood ocean, learning to some extent of the secrets they hold, including the first planetary life since the Rapture. AT5 is discovered sometime afterwards, however, and 2 weeks before the main gameplay is scanned by satellites and explored by the 3 burner subs as well as the SM-8. The explorations include at least one by the SM-13, piloted by a convict who leaves a written pen and paper note before dying of forced suffocation, as well as the journey taken by a scientist in the better-equipped SM-8, which is found in pieces in the ocean trench. The COI must have retrieved some crucial information from the SM-8's final mission, however, since at this point they suddenly become very interested in exploring AT5 further, which leads us into the main gameplay. We, the player, take the Iron Lung on its final journey, seeing all kinds of bizarre things, perhaps even finding the SM-8 and reading all of the terminal logs before ending up destroyed, torn up by the same monster fish that destroyed the SM-8 at the last point of interest. Nothing is recovered from the expedition, no one from the COI sees our photographs or ever learns about what happened, and the game simply ends. Despite the dark and disturbing tone of the game, the ending message strives for hope in the void. Perhaps this is actually an in-universe log written by whoever wrote the SM-8 log, or maybe it's just some out-of-universe narration like the introduction text. Either way, that's everything I've got for the lore of Iron Lung. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Maybe join us in the Discord server linked in the description. These actions take very little time or effort, and it really helps me out a lot. It helps you too. This video was super fun to make. I'm honestly really happy to have a fresh new indie horror game with lore that isn't trying to sell itself to children. Iron Lung's got solid world building, mysteries that are open to interpretation rather than convoluted with detail. I would love to see it expanded more, especially with named characters, but I'm also really happy with what we've got. Before I actually end the video though, I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk about a few other audible topics that didn't really make it into the main script. I mentioned at the start that I had 3 ideas for Iron Lung videos, those 2 scrap ones. Did anyone else notice the uncanny similarities between Iron Lung and the original Five Nights at Freddy's? Let me just get a visual on screen here, side-by-side comparison, because I couldn't milk this and stretch out into a whole video, and I think I can sum up all the details I need to here, but does the thought process make sense? I mean, obviously there's a number of significant differences between the 2, but I'm kind of amazed that Iron Lung doesn't have a bigger cult following. I mean, there's just so much, it's uncanny, and I guess maybe I have a type, you know, when it comes to video games now. I mean, look at this channel. My other scrapped video idea was just speculation on the future of Iron Lung. The thing is though, this can all be summed up in one sentence, because David Szymanski himself, the developer and creator of Iron Lung, basically left this comment on it. And it would seem that while, you know, Iron Lung itself won't be getting updated, sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and more are all possible, all on the table. We'll just have to wait and see. I can definitely see a few directions that the lore could go in. I feel like we could see other, you know, convicts in other subs. There were 2 other burner subs that we never really got to know about. We could see, you know, other blood oceans explored by other factions of humanity. It could even be a completely different genre of game that goes more in depth on the COI and Eden, and maybe, you know, something on the Quiet Rapture itself. I suppose the last thing I'd like to discuss, extending from this, could be an analysis and evaluation of what makes good lore, especially in the indie video game niche, but that's a whole other video. This one is over. As I said before, thank you so much for watching, and subscribe, speculate. What exactly caused the Quiet Rapture?